Today I want to make a video on my entire HO scale model train collection from locomotives to rolling stock. We've made a lot of videos unboxing them in the past 4 years, but first off, let's go take a look at the locomotives. Alright, so here is pretty much every single locomotive that I have in HO scale, quite a lot of variety, and I've actually arranged it based on the order that I got it. So right here in the front is my first ever locomotive, the ScaleTrains Tier 4 GEVO for CSX. Even 4 years later, it still looks quite good, and I remember when I first bought it, I was not planning on getting all of this. You know, I was only planning to get just this one for reference for my Minecraft builds. And I thought the price was expensive at $160, but now it's considered pretty amazing for the price of this detailed model. I also nicknamed this guy One-Eyed Willy because one of its ditch lights is always out. And I had to make 2 videos just to find out how to fix it, which I found out in the older ScaleTrains model, the contact pins are too short. Alright, next up, again from ScaleTrains, this is the BNSF C44-9, and it's in the H2 color scheme, and I think it's actually one of the best looking locomotives out of my entire train collection. Generally my BNSF locomotives, they just pop out a lot more. Colors are much more vibrant, especially if you compare it to my CSX, it's just plain dark blue. So yeah, I was pretty happy about that. But it did have this problem where I would smell this burning smell after I ran it for a while, so I had to send it back to ScaleTrains and they replaced the motor and now it runs fine. Alright, so next up we have my first Athearn Genesis locomotive, the Union Pacific SD70M. And I didn't realize this, but this is actually a weird one because it doesn't have those vertical grab irons. Apparently that's an ex-Southern Pacific feature, which is special. Alright, so next up we have the Athearn Amtrak P42DC. Now I remember when this first came out, it was actually pretty rare because Athearn hadn't run these for a very long time, and in this one they also improved the model by adding these MU hoses, which you won't find in the old version, or the ones by Kato, which were available but they are less detailed than Athearn. And then next up we have the ScaleTrains Norfolk Southern ES44 GEVO. It actually had a Tier 4 NS GEVO in N scale, but later I settled on HO. Alright, so back in the front we have another Amtrak P42, and this is number 72, with the new bolted on nose. And then after that we have a ScaleTrains Union Pacific ET44. Union Pacific also has a pretty cool livery with the flag on the side and the UP wings in the front. Then next up we have the CSX SD40-3 SpongeBob cab from ScaleTrains. It has a pretty unique shape, and I think ScaleTrains is the only manufacturer to make this model with this boxy cab. Now the only thing I don't like is that the ditch lights, they don't turn on in DC. You do need a DCC decoder to enable that feature. Then we have a local railroad, the New Jersey Transit ALP45 from Atlas, and I've actually seen this in real life when I went rail fanning in Bound Brook. Then here we have the Athearn SD70 ACU for Canadian Pacific, and it's actually one of the best looking Athearn locomotives in my opinion. I mean, the detail is just on point, especially look at this PTC antenna array, just has all those little details in there, and the colors are pretty vibrant. Alright, so behind that we have this Athearn P42. This is the Amtrak 184 Phase 4 Heritage Unit. Now unfortunately the real life 184 was repainted to normal Amtrak colors, so now it's not matching the real life one. Alright, so next up we have the Athearn BNSF SD70 ACE. Definitely one of my favorite locomotives here. I mean, the SD70 Aces, they look pretty great. The only thing Athearn messed up is the cab roof on this model. Like, they don't have the 3 pipes that go in between the PTC antenna arrays, which they had done correctly on the SD70 ACUs. But besides that, it's a pretty good locomotive. Then next up we have the Athearn CSX GP38-2. To be honest, I don't really like this locomotive because whenever I run it, it just has this high-pitched whining sound. Alright, so next up we have the ScaleTrains Southern Pacific-9. I actually already had a BNSF-9, but this one's actually special because ScaleTrains actually wanted to sponsor one of my videos, so they sent me this one. Big thanks to Drayton for sending me this to review. Then next up we have this Athearn Canadian National SD70M-2. It's an alright locomotive, though I think I probably should have gone with one with a black roof instead of white. Just looks a little bit off. Alright, then behind that we have another Canadian. This is the Go Transit F59PH from RapidoTrains, and I got it to run with the Go Transit bi-level coaches. It is pretty nice, although I remember when I first unboxed it, this back cover just fell off, so I had to glue it back in. It was pretty easy to fix though. And then next up we have the Athearn Union Pacific MP15AC, my first dedicated switcher, and yeah, it's a pretty good model. Then next up we have the ScaleTrains Canadian Pacific AC4400CW, and I do remember it was actually their first time running an AC4400, which a lot of people kept asking them to make this, so it was a pretty big deal when they announced it. And this is where I realized Canadian Pacific has two different beaver logos, this realistic one versus this flat modern one. And then after that, I got my first HO scale steam locomotive, the Athearn Genesis Union Pacific 844. This is the most I spent on one locomotive, but steam locomotives, they're just way more complex than diesels. And recently, a model railroad's nightmare is dropping a locomotive, and that's what happened. And I especially wanted to repair this because I didn't want it broken in my model train video, so now it has a new running board and cab. Alright, so next up we have the ScaleTrains Conrail C39-8. And technically it's a Norfolk Southern because it has that patch. Now unfortunately I got a new camera and I still gotta check out the settings, so the blue color is actually more vibrant in real life. This one's a little bit washed out. And then next up we have the Broadway Limited Santa Fe F3. And this one does have a B unit. And big thanks to Broadway Limited for actually sending me this to review. I feel like this is the quintessential American train when people imagine what a model train's like. Then right over here we have the Broadway Limited Union Pacific Big Boy. This is UP 4014, the largest and most famous train in my collection. It's just a beast and super heavy. Now the only reason I have this is that Broadway Limited themselves, they sent me this to review, so I do thank them a lot for this. It is one of the coolest locomotives ever. And then finally our latest locomotive, this is the Athearn CSX 420. It's an AC 4400 CW and it's in the YN2 livery, which I think is the best CSX livery, so I really dig it. Although I am a little bit mad they didn't have that anti-glare paint they had in the PDF. So yeah, that was my review of my HO scale locomotives. Now let's move on to the rolling stock. So here I laid out all my rolling stock, coaches, well cars, hoppers, auto racks, and this is just half of it. The other half is on the other side. And then I actually ran out of straight tracks, so I had to use all sorts of tracks. So in the back it's extra curvy. Now to start off the collection, we're gonna go over this row here. And actually I bought a pack on eBay and it had all these just to get started. So first off we have this Missouri Pacific hopper and it comes from the brand Lifelike. It's an older brand and I believe this is from a kit. So I got two of those, and then this one, it's a Frisco. Then we have this Burlington Route tanker. It's an old style and I believe this is an Athearn ready to roll. And I remember thinking just how detailed these models were, even though they're budget friendly. And apparently the original one had this wire going across. And then we have the Western Maryland cushion car, and no, this doesn't transport cushions. And if you look at the bottom, it's made by Bachmann. And again, pretty well detailed for the price. And then lastly we have the CSX hopper with a coal load. This one's also made by Bachmann, but it is pretty cheap looking and kind of mid. Then next up we have the Walthers 40-foot Thrall rebuilt intermodal well cars. They are pretty cool, and you can add in these intermodal shipping containers, which I remember was really expensive because they're like $10 each and you need 10 of them. But at least the video did really well. Alright, so next up we have some Walthers 60-foot high cube boxcars. So this TTX one, you can see this everywhere in real life, and it's pretty decently detailed. Even had some bottom plumbing. And I also got a version with Canadian National. Then I also got this Walthers Union Pacific covered hopper, and I really like this slogan here on the side, "We will deliver." And I also got an Athearn Genesis covered hopper. Now it was the first time getting Athearn Genesis, which is more expensive, but it is more detailed. They have a lot of printing and the grab irons are pretty thin, and the top has see-through etched metal walkways, which isn't present on cheaper models. Then next we have some Walthers Proto Amtrak Amfleet 2s. The Walthers Proto brand is a higher standard than the Walthers mainline, which we saw before, so you can see at the bottom it has a ton of detail. One thing though, you do have to add in the decals for the numbers yourself, which I did recently. Then next up we have some Kato Maxi 4 intermodal well cars. These are the longer 53 foots and pretty good quality. They're made of metal and they roll pretty great. Then next up we have the Bachmann Amfleet 1. Now these are cheaper than the Walthers Proto. If you look at the bottom, you can see the middle part has nothing there. And the trucks are pretty boxy, not exactly prototypical. I didn't initially want to get this, but these were widely available compared to Walthers. But at least they did come with the numbers printed on. I later came to appreciate this model because, you know, it just rolls a lot better, can go tighter curves without derailing, and also comes with interior lighting, which is pretty nice. So I also got a second coach of that. And this third, this is the Northeast Regional Cafe car, so it has these extra details in the middle. Then we have the Rapido Horizon dinette car. So when I was buying them, they were kind of going out of stock and the dinette car was the only one available, so I couldn't get any coaches. But yeah, Rapido did a really good job with this, and it's actually pretty hefty. And the bottom is really well detailed. This is just something RapidoTrains is really proud of, having detailed bottoms. The only thing is that it's incredibly expensive, but at least it comes with lighting. And then behind that we have the ScaleTrains Rivet Counter auto rack. Now this is really well detailed, and the colors and the paint sheen is really nice, at least on the Union Pacific one. And I also got the cheaper operated version of it, which doesn't come with door handles, so it looks kind of weird. And the side sheets, they don't have real holes, and the colors are more flat. So definitely stick with Rivet Counter. Alright, then next we have the Athearn Spine Car. Now these come with trailer hitches, which I later learned you do have to glue them or else they're gonna fall apart. And then behind that we have some ScaleTrains Befcon Gondola cars. These are pretty good models, but the coal loads don't come with them. You have to buy them separately, so I did have to wait a while for that, but at least they look pretty realistic. Then we have the Kato Amtrak Superliner, which I actually have another coach of it here. These are pretty well made. I really like the metallic sheen of this. Just the only thing in the bottom of the ends, they don't have all the detail, but overall pretty well made. And I also got the lounge car, which comes with these big windows for sightseeing, and you can see it does have an interior with all the seating inside. Now one bad thing about this model is that its coupler, it's made of plastic and it's really skinny, so it's not that durable, and actually need to replace one coupler from this car. And then we have the Exactrail Coil Shield car for Conrail. I really like the design and color, and it's pretty decently detailed. It's probably my favorite coil car, and I did get to see these in real life. I also like this New York Central patch because I'm from New York City. And then we have a CSX coil car. Now this is from ScaleTrains, and the cool thing about this car is that you can actually open up the lid, and then you can put in some coil loads inside. And then next up we have the Athearn Maxi 3 intermodal well cars, and they're in the Southern Pacific speed lettering logo. And in real life these cars are pretty rare because they're 48 foot. Most of these were cut down to 40 foot and were called Maxi 1s, but they were more expensive and harder to get, so I settled on the Maxi 3s. But later I found out there's actually still a couple of these Maxi 3s that still exist, so it could still be a contemporary train. Alright, then next up we have the Walthers mainline center beam flat cars. I have two different designs. The first one is a Union Pacific opera window with this load, which is made of plastic, and it does come with an okay amount of detail. Not mind-blowing though. And then here I have another one, it's painted black. And then next up we have New Jersey Transit, one of my local railroads. This one's from Atlas, and they also are from New Jersey, and it's a Bombardier multi-level coach, pretty well detailed. And I saw the real life one when I went rail fanning in Bound Brook. And I also got this Conrail Heritage unit. Pretty nice. Alright, so that's it for this side. Now we have a whole new section over here. It's a pretty funky layout because I'm running out of straight track. Alright, so first off we have the DODX 40,000 series flat car used by the Department of Defense, aka the military. And these were made by Spring Mills Depot. It's actually their first run, so a lot of people are actually waiting years and years for this. But luckily I just got this in time. And I also got two M1A1 Abram tank loads. And these are made by Architect, a company from the Netherlands. And they made it specifically for train loads, and it's a ready-made model, so you don't have to do anything. You can just put it on. Definitely would recommend them if you're into military stuff. And then next up we have some ScaleTrains tank cars. I really dig this white and black one. It just looks really nice, and it has those heat shields on the sides. Pretty great models. And then here in the front we have the Kato Amtrak Viewliner 2 baggage car. It's the first time they were produced in HO scale, so everyone was pretty happy about that since these are pretty common in real life, and the quality is pretty good. Then next up we have Intermountain's A-Line twin stack well cars, and they have these pretty cool bulkheads on the ends. So it is a pretty unique design, and you'll still see these in real life, but these are not in production anymore. You do have to buy them from eBay. And then next up we have these two cars. Now it's actually from my first ever sponsored video by Diecast Masters. They sent me this Caterpillar Progress Rail train set, which is pretty huge, so I did sell off most of it. But I did keep these two cars. We have the CSX Boxcar, which I think is actually a Walthers, and the Flatcar, which is also by Walthers. And the set also came with these Caterpillar construction vehicles, which is pretty cool. Though recently I noticed because this piece is made of plastic, while the other parts are die-cast metal, so over time if you move this plastic piece a lot, it will, eventually come apart because it's not so durable. So that is unfortunate. They should have made it all die-cast metal. Then next up we have the Tropicana Reefer cars, or refrigerator cars. These are made by Atlas, and they're pretty decently detailed. And I want to get this because, the Tropicana juice train. It's a famous train down in Florida transporting orange juice. And I had a Union Pacific one. Now behind that we have some ScaleTrains covered hoppers. Real like the BNSF one, and you can use it for their earthworm trains. We also have a patched out one and a KCS one, which is operator. And then next up we have another DODX flat car. I actually got this car at the same time when I got this one, but I needed something to hold these M1A2 Abrams tanks, which are Roco model kits. I did have to assemble them, have to paint them myself, so that took a really long time. It was the first time assembling a model kit from scratch, so I'm pretty happy with the result. And I also picked up these Atlas RTDX flat cars, and these are 89 9 footers, so pretty long. Got 2 of those. And I also got another Roco model. This is the M270 MLRS, and I painted it in the NATO woodland camouflage. And it also fires rockets just like the HIMARS, but 2 times as much. And then over here we have this Roco Hemet truck. This is the M977, and I recently added this decal here. And then next up I bought this 3D printed Humvee from eBay, and I painted it myself. And this is also 3D printed. This is a M1078 MTV, and I recently added windows using Scotch tape. And then I have another 3D printed Humvee. And then after that we have this Tenja Scale Models chassis system caboose. This is a pretty well detailed model. I do love that chassis cat on the side, but it is pretty expensive. And then next up we have the Colvare bathtub gondola car. This is from Atlas, and I also got the scrap metal one. And I wanted to get this car in particular because it was in the Cactus Train collision animation. And then next up we have some more military stuff. These are Strikers, and they're actually model kits from Trident Miniatures. So I did have to hand assemble it for myself. It was quite a pain. This was a medical evacuation vehicle, and this is on an Atlas 68-foot flat car. And I also have the infantry carrier vehicle Striker, and these are used in Ukraine. And then back here we have this Trident M1A2. This is with the APS trophy system. So it is a pretty advanced looking Abrams tank. Now unfortunately when I filmed the videos with these vehicles, it didn't do as well as when I filmed the other two. So I was pretty bummed out about that. Maybe you guys can let me know down in the comments what went wrong with that video. Then next up we have another military train, and we have some more Architect loads. This one is the M1A1, but it has a combat load, so there is a machine gun and bags on top, which you won't see in the train load version. And then right over here we have the M88 recovery vehicle, the Hercules, and behind that we have 2 M2 Bradleys from the Gulf War era. Alright, next up we have something local. This is the New York City subway car from MTH, the R21. Now unfortunately this is a pretty old subway car because they don't really make new ones, so I had to buy this one, and I'm not sure if it's exactly prototypical, but it's still pretty cool because it's a Redbird. And that came in a set of 4, got it from Train World. Then over here we have the Railgun Gondola car by Arrowhead Models. It was a pretty expensive model for the size, but it was made of brass and really well detailed. But it was a disappointment because when I unboxed it, this whole sidewall came off, and now it's bowing and there's some paint chipping. It's also pretty lightweight, and since it's made of brass you can make dents in it easily just like the prototype. But yeah, I'm not really happy it came out of the box like that, especially for how expensive it was. So to juxtapose it, I got this cheaper Walthers mainline railgun. It's a lot longer and nothing's really wrong with it, but yeah, since it is cheaper, most of the details are just molded in instead of separately applied pieces. And then we have the ScaleTrains backpacker well cars, and it comes in this interesting lime green color. And like all other ScaleTrains models, this one is also really well detailed with the etched metal walkways, and it's pretty cool patching detail on the side. And it's metal, so it's pretty heavyweight, good roller. Alright, next up we have the RapidoTrains Go Transit bi-level commuter cars. This one runs in Canada and comes in a set of 3. This one is pretty realistically detailed, and it's a higher quality than the Athearn rated wool version. And again, RapidoTrains does like having pretty cool bottoms. They also are from Canada. Now the one thing I don't like about this is that they don't have this side cab window, which did come out later, but RapidoTrains like older versions of models. Then next up we have the GSC heavy duty flat car from Class 1 Model Works, and I also got the large transformer load and put it on top. You do have to attach these lines yourself, and I did do a little bit of painting here. And the load is 3D printed, so when you get it, it's all in one color. And it's pretty light. This car is a lowboy, pretty well detailed for a flat car, but when I did unbox it, this whole thing was tilting to the side. I think some quality control issue with the material they used, and I'm not the only one. They made a whole video about that. They are a really new company, so they still gotta work on their stuff. And then right over here we have the CSX covered hopper from ScaleTrains. Comes in this nice cream livery, and it's just like the other hoppers. Then over here we have the 2 hooded steel coil cars from ScaleTrains, and the cool thing about this is that they have mismatched hoods. Nice pastel colors, and also have one with Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific. And then over here we have a 68-foot bulkhead flat car, also from ScaleTrains. Now ScaleTrains, they don't actually make loads for these cars, so I had it for a while, and later I picked up this pipe load from eBay. It's actually just made of straw, so it's pretty simple in design, but it does look really nice in real life. And I also got the steel plate load from the same guy, and yeah, it's actually like feels like actual metal, and I do like the rusting on the side. And I also picked up this Exactrail Norfolk Southern coal car, and this is when ScaleTrains just acquired Exactrail. And I remember when I unboxed it, these things were falling apart, and then this part as well. Yeah, I don't know, this car is pretty brittle. Stuff breaks off easily compared to my other Exactrail coal car, but don't worry, after I filmed the video I did fix up the handrail. And then next up we have the Atlas 53-foot well car. Comes in blue. It is decently detailed, but it is made of plastic, but nothing too special. And then we have the Aurora Miniatures Railgun Gondola, and this one is way more detailed than the other railguns I got. Aurora Miniatures are pretty new, but they are pretty great at detailing, and it's also quite heavy and feels robust robust, so it is pretty good quality, although someone commented on my video that's actually missing the GN on one side, and also the numbers, so good eye fragment 11. You're the only one who spotted that. Alright, then our final and most recent car. These are the Intermountain Auto Racks, which actually has functioning doors which can open up, but they tell you to limit the amount of times you open it because they're pretty fragile. And this model is also cool because it has those see-through etched metal walls. And we also have a BNSF version of it. These are the most common auto racks I see in real life, so I'm glad I got them. So that's it for the rolling stock. Now, one question people always ask me is that can you run every single rail car in one train? And the answer is I don't think that's even possible anymore. You know, when I first started the video, I thought, okay, I'll do that at the end, that'll be pretty cool. But once I laid everything out, I'm pretty much using like every single straight track I have, and I don't think I could fit everything in one train. I would need one of those spiraling helixes for the train to move in a loop. I don't think my room has enough space for that. And speaking of space, you may be wondering why there aren't some other trains that I've unboxed in the video, you know, like the Excella, the Pico ICE3, the TGV. And the simple thing is I don't keep everything I have. Especially for things like the Excella, they just come in this huge box and I just don't have enough space for that. Well, at least I got to experience it, and you can always go back and watch each of my videos for more information about each of these rolling stock. Maybe you're curious about something. I actually was planning on doing some more things for this video, but it's already like over 20 minutes long, so I guess I'll save that for another time. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Next car.